Hello and welcome back to the second episode of 7 Steps That Will Measurably Improve Your Organization's Productivity. My name is Alex Glassey and I'm here on behalf of myself and my two colleagues, Karen Jensen and Linda Ray, who are back in Australia while I sit here in Canada. And we have been talking about in this series how to answer this question. In today's relentlessly challenging world, in today's relentlessly changing world, how can my organization thrive? And so in the first video, what we had talked about is how psychological safety improves business performance. In this video, we're going to talk about the PS25, which is how to measure psychological safety in teams and leaders. And then in the final video, we're going to look at PS Conductor, how to link psychological safety to business performance, and then what to do from there. It's awesome. A little bit of a flashback from last video. We started off by saying psychological safety is our brain's protection against dying alone on the savannah. In order for us to survive 1,000,000 years ago, we needed to be part of a group. We needed to be part of a team. And so our brains made sure that we could figure out how to form teams and how to be a part of those teams in order to survive and then to thrive. Because of that, part of our brain, a big chunk of our brain, is constantly surveying the social landscape, thinking, if I do this, if I stick up my hand here, if I make this comment, whatever it is I'm going to do, will I be hurt or embarrassed or criticized? And it tries to make sure that we absolutely won't. And it's also one of the reasons why when we do something silly, that where we know where it's not good for the team or where we are embarrassed, it feels awful when we are removed from a team for some reason. It literally feels like we're going to die, doesn't it? I mean, just breaking up is part of that, right? If you're ever broken up with a girlfriend or boyfriend, right? We know what happens. We feel awful and it feels like we're going to die. That's why the brain wants us to make sure. It still thinks, because our brain is, we've evolved, maybe the technology's evolved, but our brains are still 1,000,000 years old. And the brain wants us to make sure that, wow, you got to stick close to other people. So that's the root of psychological safety. And then what we also saw last time is that Gallup was able to show that psychological safety, when we improve psychological safety in the people in our organizations, that actually has a distinct and measurable bottom line result. So they didn't say how it was connected, but they did say that it was, and they could show it. What we then did is I introduced a productivity model that says, well, listen, we know that we've got a bunch of KPIs and metrics and things like that help us to measure the progress of the organization, and we try to hold people accountable to those particular numbers. But that's got its strengths and weaknesses, right? And what we really want to do is we want to also make sure that we understand how people are doing from a psychological safety perspective, because we know, Gallup has just told us, that the more we feel psychologically safe, the better and higher our KPIs are. We want to be in this quadrant right here in success, right? All these orange arrows then show, if we were able to create a chart like this and track and measure teams and put them up on here, these green dots, which, by the way, this is live information, and I'll show you how we did this in a little while. If we were able to do this, it means that if we could move a dot to the northeast, to the up and to the right, we would gain performance. And this orange arrows, therefore, represents unrealized potential that's sitting in our organizations right now. It is sitting in your organization right now. So let's start off. What is the PS25? The PS25 is the world's first psychological safety assessment tool for organizations. The PS in PS25 stands for psychological safety. I'm sure you guessed that already. And the 25 means 25 easy to understand questions that take 3 minutes and 40 seconds to answer. And when we say easy to understand, we've designed it so that it has a very, very low Fleshman-Kincaid grade level score. Fleshman-Kincaid grade level says, this number here says that people who have grade 7 or under are able to understand and respond to the questions effectively. Newspapers are written to a grade 7, 8, or higher, right? The New York Times might be a grade 13 or 14. Other surveys that we've looked at and we've studied, they also have much higher Fleshman-Kincaid grade levels. And so what happens then, if you're starting to use a survey that has a higher Fleshman-Kincaid grade level, like 12 or 13 or 14, it means that the questions are more difficult to answer. They take longer to answer, and the accuracy of the answers is going to be impacted because there'll be people answering who feel they're obligated to answer questions that may not have a full understanding of what the question fully means. And then, of course, making sure that it takes not a lot of time to answer. We just want to get in, get a sense of what people are feeling, and then get out. And so the shorter these things are to answer, and you'll see how I'm going to expose you to a couple of questions in just a minute, but the shorter it takes to answer these surveys, the more effective it is, in particular on the back half of the questions. The PS25 is administered digitally, securely, and confidentially, and either on a browser or in a mobile device. Each question is answered by choosing never, sometimes, often, or always. And so, again, this makes the questions easier to answer. Once you've gone through 2 or 3 questions and you understand, you get a sense of the never, sometimes, often, always, all the questions now become much easier to answer. You're not having to try to re-figure out how to answer each question because it's got different terms. PS scores then are presented out of 100, so they're presented for the organization as a whole, but also for any group or any level inside that organization. Surveys are answered by individuals because that's how we experience psychological safety. It's individuals feeling greater or lower degrees of psychological safety. That's what we're trying to track. But the results are presented by groups for 2 reasons, one of which is confidentiality, of course. But the other is because the solution lies in the group, not in the individual. And here's why. When you're in a psychological safety actually comes from the people around us. When we are inside a group, it's the group itself, the group dynamics, that impact how we feel, either more or less psychologically safe. And I've got another word in just a minute, but that's why we present these results in groups and teams and departments or the company or organization overall. The 25 questions are divided into 5 specific, what we call social domains, and here they are: significance, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and equity. Significance being how, not important, but how significant, how do you feel, are you important to the group as a whole, and if so, along what dimensions? How certain do you feel that what's going on is, do you feel that there's lots of change, or there's not lots of change? Do you feel some sense of certainty and stability in your team? Autonomy. Do you feel that you have the ability to kind of make your own decisions and have initiative, do things your own way? How related do you feel to the other teams? Do you find that they respect you and like you and that type of thing? That's what relatedness is. And equity is, hey, are things fair? So these 25 questions break down into each of these 5 social domains. The PS25, we talked about PS25 being answered personally, but being presented only in groups. And I said the reason is because psychological safety is experienced because of the people around us. Well, the PS25 is about leadership as well. And the reason is that up to 70% of the psychological safety level that an individual and a team feels is a result of that group's immediate manager. Our supervisor, our manager, our boss, the person who has so much control over the work that we do, how that work is received, about so many other things in our working world, that level of power and control means that they have an undue amount of impact on how we're feeling psychologically, how we're feeling, what our levels of psychological safety are. So the PS25, as it measures team psychological safety, is also implicitly measuring leadership ability, leadership skills. All right. Why don't I take you through this five questions so you can experience it? It'll only take about 20 or 25 seconds. Let's go through 5 questions, all right? So just sit calmly for a minute, and let's go through them. So there you go. There's 5 questions. Take a few seconds just to reflect on how you feel about them. You feel relaxed? Were they easy to understand, easy to read? Did you feel challenged or threatened by those questions at all? One of the differences between the PS25 and some of the other surveys, many of the other surveys ask what you think about things that are outside of yourself. So what do you think about the corporate direction? Do you think that the safety standards are appropriate? What do you think about the people around you, whether it be your peers or your immediate supervisor? The thinking, there's 2 issues with it. The first is that they're inherently threatening. They carry a little bit of threat. Well, yikes. I'm not sure that I really want to tell you what I think about the people around me or corporate strategy or those types of things because, those are people that have a direct influence on my life. The second thing is that as we think about things, our answer to how we think about things, 2/3 of it is actually biases that we pick up from other places that have much less relevance on the actual thing itself. And so what we're finding is that the literature is starting to be increasingly critical of some of these surveys. Whereas what the PS25 does is it asks you how you feel. And one of the things that we know people know is how they feel. And that question about how you feel about just internally is much less threatening than how you think about that. It's how you feel about this, right? The score, there's a score that comes out of 100. And then we can do a number of things with the results of the PS25. The first is we can show you how it's distributed amongst your team. So even though your overall company score might be 70, the fact is you've got some people up here who are feeling really psychologically safe, and you've got some people down here who are feeling very unpsychologically safe. And anything below a 60 in our metrics, in our grading of this, anything below a 60 means unduly psychologically unsafe, if you will. We can also break it up into component pieces. So here we've broken it up the distribution by the 5 social domains. And then we can also zoom in and take a look at, for the particular organization or group, each of the answers to on aggregate of the 25 questions. And you can see it starts to pick up some things that are higher or lower. But because it explodes a single answer, a single number into 25 aspects, it's very nuanced and starts to give us very clear clues as to exactly why people are feeling very psychologically safe or very unpsychologically safe. It's kind of like an X-ray for your organization. So if this is an X-ray machine and here's an organizational chart and I'm just going to flick the switch on here like that, all of a sudden I can see areas of high psychological safety, I can see areas of low psychological safety, and not only that, I can zoom in to any one of these areas to see more information about exactly why. It actually goes beyond an X-ray. It's almost like an MRI. It's much more sensitive. And again, I just want to reinforce that what we're seeing here are team dynamics, team psychological safety scores, not individual psychological safety scores. So now what we've got is we've got a very solidly quantified number over here, whatever KPI we're looking at, but we've also got a very solid quantified number over here. And so this now gives us a sense of, okay, can we now take these numbers, relate them? We know that they are related because Gallup has told us. Now can we relate them directly in our own organization to really start to get to the nut of organizational performance? And that's what we're going to talk about in the next video, where we're going to bring these things together and show you how to link psychological safety to business performance. So thanks for watching this particular video. Hope it's found it interesting, and I'll see you on the next one.